Iran just choked a critical artery of the global energy system. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow, unforgiving funnel through which a sizable share of the world's oil and liquefied gas once flowed, is effectively being held hostage. And there is one risky, lesser-discussed military gamble on the table: the amphibious seizure of the islands that control the strait. That secret move could force reopened passages, but it could also ignite a cascade of regional and global consequences. Here's why that choice is so dangerous, and why every option left to policymakers is costly in different ways. But let's be clear. This isn't just a military crisis. It's a direct hit to your pocket. If this blockade holds, fuel prices at your local pump could double in as little as 48 hours. Before we dig into tactics, put the scale in perspective. Pre-crisis estimates put roughly 1/5 of global crude transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Beyond crude, LNG exports, ammonia, and fertilizer feedstocks move through that bottleneck. Entire regional economies depend on timely shipments. When ships stop moving here, the effects ripple far beyond the Gulf. Energy markets, agricultural inputs, shipping costs, insurance premiums, and manufacturing supply chains all feel it. It's not just oil, it's the global sulfur supply. Half of the world's maritime sulfur trade passes through this gap. Without it, global agriculture and copper mining, essential for modern electronics and munitions, face a total standstill. If this matters to you, subscribe and ring the bell. We'll keep tracking developments. Geography is the first weapon in Iran's kit. The strait narrows to about 33 kilometers at its tightest, hemmed by islands and steep coastal terrain. Those physical constraints neutralize much of the advantage of standoff, long-range forces. In a wide ocean, carriers and long-range missiles can project power from a distance. In Hormuz, rock outcrops, narrow channels, and shallow waters turn geography into a force multiplier for defenders. You don't need to match the enemy ship for ship. You need to dominate choke points and overlay the water with hazards. That is the essence of the kill box Iran has worked to build. Kill box, in this context, means a layered, overlapping set of threats that makes passage lethal or prohibitively expensive. Iran has combined 4 asymmetric vectors to create that effect. Each one is simple, cheap in isolation, but lethal when fused together. The first vector, mines. Analysts and regional sources have reported up to thousands of mines seeded in the approaches to the strait. Some estimates put that figure in the low thousands, though exact counts are uncertain. Mines are indiscriminate, cheap to produce, and deadly to large commercial hulls. They don't need to be accurate, they only need to be where shipping transits. Clearing mines is slow, methodical, and dangerous work. Mines turn a choke point into a time-consuming gauntlet. The second vector, coastal anti-ship missile batteries. Hardened positions on the shoreline, mobile launchers, and redundant fire control systems force any transiting vessel into range denial. Even if you knock out one battery, others remain mobile or dispersed in caves and tunnels. These shore-based systems can threaten both commercial tankers and the ships tasked to protect them. The third vector, swarm tactics using fast attack craft. Hundreds of small, agile boats can saturate an area, exploiting the limited reaction time of a single, large ship or escort. Swarm attacks are difficult to track and even harder to interdict at scale. Fast boats can harass, distract, and, in combination with missiles and mines, create a tactical environment where larger naval assets are at constant risk. The fourth vector, unmanned systems. Suicide boats and aerial drones. Low-cost cells can be launched en masse to overwhelm defenses, strike at escorts, or conduct standoff attacks on ships transiting the channel. Unmanned systems allow adversaries to stake out the strait while minimizing risk to their own forces. Importantly, Iranian defensive posture has partially decentralized. After targeted strikes aimed at leadership and centralized command, analysts report that pre-delegated authorities and autonomous coastal units have continued to operate. In practice, that means even if command nodes are degraded, local commanders and automated systems can keep the kill box functional. Decapitation hurts, but it does not necessarily stop distributed, low-cost harassment. What have U.S. and allied efforts achieved so far, and why are they struggling? A prolonged air campaign and strikes have taken out a reported number of launchers and infrastructure. Analysts say tens of thousands of munitions have been expended across multiple missions. The exact totals vary by source. Damage to some missile systems and launch sites is real, but the overall effect has been constrained by dispersion, mobility, and hardened positions. Mobile launchers can withdraw, reoccupy, or re-emerge from subterranean caches. Hardened bunkers resist standard air-delivered ordnance. There is also an economic calculus at play. Expensive penetrating munitions were designed to defeat hardened subterranean targets. Designations like the GBU-72 or the GBU-57 are reaching the discussion, the GBU-72 and GBU-57 being examples of 2-ton-class bunker busters intended for deep, reinforced targets. These are capable weapons, but each strike with such munitions represents a significant financial outlay. When an adversary can repair, re-employ, or replace low-cost launchers and systems for a fraction of the attacking cost, the attacker faces a steep ledger of diminishing returns, the asymmetric math that favors the cheaper, attrition-style campaign. So where does that leave policymakers? There are effectively 3 archetypal options on the table, each with different profiles of feasibility, cost, and escalation risk. Option 1. Keep bombing. An intensified air campaign aims to systematically destroy missile batteries, command nodes, and logistics. In concept, relentless targeting degrades the threat over time and reduces Iran's ability to sustain the kill box. In practice, the limits are clear. Penetrating hardened and dispersed targets requires a steady supply of high-cost munitions and detailed targeting intelligence. The time frame to make the strait reliably safe could be long, and each step risks provoking further retaliation, not only from Iranian forces but from regional proxies. Financially and politically, sustained high-intensity strikes may prove unpopular and difficult to justify domestically and with partners. Option 2. Naval escort and mine countermeasures. Try to keep ships moving under protection. This approach combines escorting tankers with dedicated mine hunting and clearance operations. The problem is capacity. The U.S. Navy's mine countermeasure, MCM fleet, has been pared down over recent decades, and analysts note a capability gap in specialized MCM ships and systems. Mine clearance is laborious. Mechanical sweeping, influence sweeping, and diving operations are slow, and every mine discovered can force a pause in traffic. Escalation risk remains high because escorts present tempting targets. Every protective convoy is another node the adversary can attempt to disrupt. To keep a steady stream of commercial traffic flowing would require an unsustainable level of naval effort and long-term commitment. And even then, convoys and routes would be limited compared to normal peacetime throughput. Option 3. The secret move. Seize the islands that control the strait. Taking control of Keshem, Abu Musa, and the Greater and Lesser Tunbs would, in theory, deny Iran the geographic advantages that make the kill box so effective. This is the option that planners weigh quietly because it offers a clear tactical lever. Occupy the terrain, deny firing positions, and physically reopen navigation corridors. As the USS Tripoli and the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit move into position, the possibility of an amphibious assault moves from theoretical planning to an imminent operational reality. But the costs are immense. An amphibious seizure is a complex, high-risk operation. It requires ground forces trained for beach and vertical assaults, sustained logistics to hold territory, and immediate air and naval firepower to suppress counterattacks. Reports have referenced forces staged in the area, names such as the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, and a platform like USS Tripoli appear in reporting as potential elements in such a scenario. But these references are reported staging, not confirmation of plans. Even with elite formations, assaulting well-prepared defenders in constricted terrain invites heavy casualties and urban-style fighting. The islands are small, but they can be made into fortified, interlocking defensive systems with anti-ship and anti-air weapons, prepared ambushes and booby-trapped approaches. Beyond the immediate combat risk is the strategic danger. Invading or forcibly occupying Iranian-held territory is a territorial seizure that dramatically raises the stakes. It carries a high probability of provoking wider conventional responses, asymmetric retaliation across the region, and a surge in proxy attacks on allied interests. The political costs are also severe. International opinion, legal questions over sovereignty, and the diplomatic fallout with neutral or regional states would complicate any attempt to legitimize long-term occupation. If forced to weigh likelihoods, seizure could produce a localized tactical success, reopening lanes for a time, but at the price of possibly expanding the war. The secret move is not a surgical cut. It's a major escalation that shifts the conflict into a new phase. Whichever option is chosen, the asymmetric financial math looms large. When a single penetrator can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, or more, and a swarm of low-cost drones or a few mines can blunt that expenditure, the sustainability question bites hard. Over time, the defender with cheaper, easier-to-replace systems has an endurance advantage. That helps explain Iran's continued strategy. Attrition via low-cost tools multiplied across many axes, rather than expensive, single-point capabilities. Now broaden the aperture. Local tactics can cascade into a multi-regional crisis. If Hormuz remains contested, pressure shifts to alternate routes. Gulf producers may attempt to export through longer, more vulnerable corridors, or increase pipeline flows where feasible, options that are limited and costly. Iran and its proxies could intensify operations in the Red Sea, target port infrastructure, or strike at desalination plants and power stations across the Gulf. Attacks on desalination facilities in water-scarce states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE would compound humanitarian and economic pressure beyond energy markets. The global economy is sensitive to such shocks. An enforced reduction in flows through Hormuz would lift oil and gas prices, roil futures markets, and raise transport and fertilizer costs. Agricultural production worldwide could suffer if ammonia and fertilizer supply chains are disrupted, potentially raising food prices. Shipping insurance rates would spike, rerouting vessels and increasing delivery times and costs for manufacturers dependent on just-in-time logistics. Financial markets would price in higher risk, and countries dependent on imported energy would feel immediate pressure. All of these outcomes are plausible, not inevitable. The exact trajectory depends on choices made by multiple actors. The the tempo of military operations, diplomatic interventions, and the resilience of global markets. Policymakers face a brutal trade-off: tolerate continuing harassment that keeps the strait functionally closed but avoids full-scale invasion, or accept a high-risk, high-cost operation that could reopen lanes but likely expands the war and imposes heavy long-term costs. In sober balance, the amphibious seizure remains the most direct way to deny Iran the geographic advantages it exploits, which is why it's the secret move that keeps planners awake. But it's neither surgical nor cost-free. The kill box is built of many small, cheap parts. Breaking it requires either sustained, expensive firepower or a high-risk ground operation. Neither path guarantees a clean outcome. The asymmetric math, cheap, numerous Iranian tools against expensive Western solutions, suggests attrition favors the defender in time unless a decisive political settlement or a dramatic shift in operational capacity occurs. Decision-makers must weigh tactical gains against strategic risks. Is a temporary reopening of sea lanes worth inviting a larger, more destructive conflict? Can allies supply the specialized mine countermeasure and escort capacity needed without an open-ended commitment? Can an air campaign reach a threshold of effectiveness without bankrupting the strategy through costs and blowback? There are no easy answers. The secret move could force a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and it could also be the spark that spreads conflict across the region and beyond, with severe economic fallout. The path chosen will reverberate not only through the Gulf but across global markets and strategic calculations for years to come. For a deeper breakdown of the military hardware, mine countermeasure gaps, and the potential economic fallout, check the pinned links and subscribe for updates.